Well, a very good morning to you on this ninth day of May 2024. You're just in time for the morning drift here on Lookuptv on a day that, of course, doctors are expected to resume duty after their union, that is the KMPDU, on the advice of the National Advisory agreed to sign a return to work formula with the national government to end their 56-day strike. Now, apart from that, of course, today the hearing to the impeachment, or rather on the impeachment of Agriculture CS Mithika Linturi, an impeachment motion tabled by Bumula MP Jack Wanami Wamboka, enters its second day. Of course, yesterday the CS and the MP for Bumula stood before the committee to defend themselves in terms of, Jack Wamboka defending his impeachment motion, of course citing grounds as to why he wants Mithika Linturi impeached. But what took center stage was not even the issue of fake fertilizer, but the love triangle with the former Aldai, or rather the sitting Aldai MP Marian Kaitani, who is the ex-wife of Mithika Linturi, with Jack Wamboka, the MP for Bumula, and the sponsor of that particular motion, telling off the CS and asking him to, of course, not include his love issues in the particular impeachment motion. Now, that particular committee has 10 days, or was given 10 days to listen to that particular matter and, of course, finalize and give its report before it is tabled in the National Assembly. Just so you know, is that 149 members of Parliament did vote for that impeachment motion, and that is what forced the National Assembly, or rather the House, to form an 11-member committee, which consists of 6 members from the ruling UDA party, and of course 4 from ODM, and 1 member from the Jubilee party. The committee is chaired by Nerima Wako, and of course deputized by Kathiani MP Robert Bui. Now we'll be talking about that, of course, and matters, the doctor's strike which came to an end yesterday, the fake fertilizer scandal probe, which the CS is involved, the return to schools now, because President William RUTO yesterday directed that schools should be reopened on Monday. But now that forms part of our conversation, because as much as schools are set to be reopened on Monday, most of the schools that had been affected, or that were affected by floods, are yet to be fully renovated, and that begs the question: when will they be renovated? Are the students of those particular schools going to go about their businesses in school? Under what circumstances? Because most of the infrastructure in several schools across the country were destroyed by the raging waters as floods continue to wreak havoc across the country. Remember, just yesterday alone, rather in the past 24 hours, that was from yesterday through to Tuesday, 19 more people lost their lives, 14 adults and 5 children, taking the total number of those who've lost their lives to the floods to 257. Now, all that, we'll be looking at all that in our conversation this particular morning. But there are very many other stories making headlines this morning on the local dailies, and we'll be looking at that immediately after this short breather. And remember, you can watch this show live on our Facebook and YouTube pages at Lookuptv. Do engage with us as well on our talk to us on our social media handles at Lookuptv. Hashtag the morning drift. Do let us know what you make of the decision by the doctors to call off their strike, despite their main issue, that is the issue of pay to medical interns, not addressed. They've given the government, of course, they agreed within that issue will be no medical interns rather will be posted within the next 60 days as they wait the litigation that is in court. And remember, KMPDU through its SG, that is Dajia Taylor, said they will not resume work until that particular issue of medical interns is addressed. Now that will be, of course, shaping up our conversation, but at this moment in time, let's just take a short breather. I'll be back with the newspaper review. Well, thank you very much for staying with us, and of course it's now time for the newspaper review, where we look at the stories making headlines in the local dailies. And I beg we begin with the Standard, and they say Linturi love affair clouds ouster trial. Linturi love affairs clouds Ouster trial. Now they say Agriculture CS Franklin Mythical Inturi became President Ruto's first minister to face grave charges of gross misconduct and violation of the constitution during an impeachment motion clouded by his past misadventures with Aldai MP Marian Kitani. Now, they've talked about the grounds for the impeachment, and there are four main grounds of impeachment. One is gross violation of the constitution by approving the procurement of fake fertilizer by NCPB, engaging in abuse of office. Now, gross misconduct by engaging in a public spat with journalists, storming manufacturing plants, and revoking licenses. The third one is failure to demonstrate professionalism in the performance of his duties in a manner that maintains public confidence. Remember, he is a public officer. And of course, number four is submitted false information to the Departmental Committee on the National Assembly on the type of distributed fertilizer. Now, just so you know, despite the fact that even the president had said those who had been, given fake fertilizer or fake fertilizer was sold to them will be compensated, because that was one way of the president saying yes, indeed there is fake fertilizer in the country and farmers were given fake fertilizer. Linturi remained adamant that there was no fake fertilizer, very, very adamant. In fact, at some point in time, he said it is substandard fertilizer, but there's no much difference really, because if it's substandard, it means it's not genuine, it means it's fake. So that's some of the reasons as to why the CS is really on the hot seat, because he kept on denying something that is, you want to say was common knowledge to everybody. Now, the main man in this particular impeachment motion, like I said, Jack Wamboka, this is what he had to say. And he said, I've looked at the document submitted by Linturi, and it is nothing more than interesting. A love letter from a jilted lover. These grounds are grievous matters of national importance to be reduced to love matters. That is what said. Linturi was told off by Jack Wamboka, and he was told not to bring his love affairs into the impeachment motion. Now, the person in at the center stage was the ex-lover of the CS, that is Aldai MP Marian Kitani, said it is unfair rather to keep dragging me I beg your pardon. Jack Wamboka insisted that it is unfair to keep dragging the good lady Marian Kitani into this matter. She has the right to accept or decline your advances. In fact, Wamboka went to the point of saying ukiachwa achika. Now, apart from that, there's a story on the doctors' strike, and they say doctors and crippling strike. Now, remember, it has been 56 days since the doctors downed their tools. Today was supposed to be day 57, but today stands out to be the first day that doctors are expected to resume their duties across the country after nights, meetings that were held day and night at the Afia House right here in the capital Nairobi, meeting that was spearheaded not only by the CS for Health, that is Susan Nahumisha, but also the chairperson of the Whole of Nation approach, that is the Chief of Staff, Felix Koskei, Solicitor General Ken Ogeitu, and of course many other people, including the stakeholders in the KMPDU, the union itself, and they reached an agreement. Like I said, we'll be talking about that. The other big story is, school reopening, headache for students, parents, and teachers. That is a story on page 2 and 3. As they talk about, classes that are yet to be renovated. There are various schools in the country that are, currently marooned with floods. So that begs the question: how will students report to school on Monday if, rains continue to pound? And what happens to the schools that have, its infrastructure is now dilapidated? Now, of course, like I said again, that will be forming basis of our conversation this particular morning. How is the government prepared, and the ministry in itself, to ensure that everything runs smoothly once we get to Monday and students go back to school? Now, they say 10,000 students could miss school in Budalangi and Teso North because about 14 schools have been damaged by floods. Now, that paints a clear picture of what I'm talking about, because if only in Budalangi and in Teso, only 14 schools rather have been damaged, and they need to be renovated as soon as possible to ensure that students go back to school. We only have like 3 days to ensure that happens, so that students can go back to school, and there's no guarantee, despite the advisory by Met, that the rains will subside a bit. So that it will cause some push and pull a little bit, but we'll wait and see what the government will do. Now, the back page of the Standard, they talk about Dortmund leave Mbappe chasing Champions League shadows. Remember, Borussia Dortmund secured their place in the final of the UEFA Champions League after seeing off Paris Saint-Germain, the Ligue 1 champions, 2-0 on aggregate, and of course 1-0 at their home in Parc des Princes in the French capital of Paris. Now, Kylian Mbappe has been on, rather in PSG, for 7 years with no Champions League trophy. He's now headed to Madrid, most likely. It is not official, but most likely he'll be destined for Madrid, who, by the way, secured their slot in the final that will be held at Wembley after seeing off Bayern Munich yesterday, 2-1 with a brace from Yosalo. Now, we shift gears to the Daily Nation now, and they say schools set to reopen amid safety fears. President William RUTO yesterday asked parents to prepare to send their children back to school on Monday, but many institutions destroyed by the floods are still in a state of despair, with classrooms and toilets submerged and roads and bridges also damaged. Is it safe for learners? That is what of course, Daily Nation says this particular morning. And like I said, 257 people have so far lost their lives to the floods across the country. Now, of course, the issue of doctors as well is on the front page, and they've talked about that on the back page of the Daily Nation. They talk about the deal that was struck by doctors to end their by the doctors and the government to end their 56-day strike. But we'll be talking about that later on. Now, they say a grandmother's night of horror, loss in city floods. Now, they say it's a sad story, because it's not, you don't to say a good week or good month for thousands of Kenyans, because, for the case of Salome Anyango, who's 60 years old, she lost 3 members of her family, a daughter and 2 grandchildren, during the floods that swept away homes and property in several parts of the city. Now, to lose just one person is always, very, very difficult thing to take. It is painful, but to lose 3 people at the same time it's a disaster. You can only imagine the situation that the 60-year-old Salome Anyango is in at the moment. Of course, that again puts the question on the state of preparedness as a country in terms of handling natural disasters. We'll be talking about that as well. Now, they've talked about the issue of fertilizer saga. As they say, bloated interiors MPs allow new witnesses. We'll be looking at that particular story on page 8 of the Daily Nation this particular morning. And just so you know, is that on Friday, Friday, the 10th of May 2024, was officially gazetted yesterday as a national holiday to mourn those who lost their lives to the floods, but also to plant trees. If whatever President William RUTO said is anything to go by, because he says and he argues that will be part of mitigating climate change, which is part of the reasons as to why we're experiencing the floods that we are having at the moment, in his view. Now, at the back page of now, there's an interesting story on page 10 before we jump to the back page of the Daily Nation, because they say tax notice, KRA tax on landlords for failing to raise rents. The taxman has raised queries with landlords whose rental income has remained unchanged for years, signaling a push to increase revenue from rent. You know what that means? If landlords are being pushed to increase the revenue from rents, it means as well you could be parting with more coins from your pocket in terms of rent, even as the taxman goes for more revenue from different sectors across the country. Now, the back page, like I said, is a story on the doctors' strike, and they talk about what they agreed and what remains to be agreed in terms of, more specifically, their main issue, which was the issue of posting medical interns. Now, just before we close the newspaper review, is that on the story of landlords that I've just alluded to, you can get it on the front page of the Business Daily, because they say KRA pressure on landlords signals fresh rent increases. And they've just put it rightly, like I said, if, Kera is on the neck of landlords in the country, then it means landlords as well will be on your neck, which means you'll have to part with more money. They say 27 billion is the shortfall in collection from rental income in 2022, according to a study. Now, one interesting fact is that many people have questioned why the government is not willing to pay doctors the amount of money that they want, that is the medical interns, but a lot of money has been channeled to other various, projects which might, are deemed not really important at the moment. Now, the Business Daily, they say State House renovations allocated 900 million shillings. Huge amount of money. Millions of money. 900 million. Remember, the highest office on the land has been on under renovations rather for some time now, and the renovations continue even as President William Ruto says there's no money to pay doctors. Now that brings us to the end of the newspaper review, but we'll be coming to in a moment with the doctors, rather the stories making headlines in the news, making headlines this morning rather. Now, we get to the stories making headlines this morning, and the long-standing doctors' strike has finally come to an end after 56 days as the government and the Kenya Medical Practitioners, Pharmacists and Dentist Union signed a return-to-work formula. The agreement comes as a result of day and night meetings on Tuesday between KMPDU and the government through the Council of Governors as well as the Ministry of Health. Now, KMPDU SG Daji Atala, speaking during a press address on Wednesday evening, said the union's National Advisory Council had backed the resolutions that came out of the said meetings, hence precipitating the need to call off the strike. Now, moving on is that President William Ruto yesterday issued a directive for the reopening of all schools on Monday, 13th, 2024. Now, this decision comes in the light of improved weather forecasts indicating a reduction in heavy rains that had previously necessitated the postponement of school reopening. At the same time, President Ruto has instructed that money for the reconstruction of school infrastructure damaged by heavy rains be made available through the National Government Constituency Development Fund.
The devastating effects of floods due to torrential rainfall in various parts of the country forced the government and the Ministry of Education to delay the reopening of schools that were set to begin on April 29 this year. But now parents must start preparing their children for the beginning of the second term. This after President William Ruto announced the reopening of schools starting 13th of May this year, which is Monday next week.
Hatutaki watoto wetu wakose nafasi pia ya term ya kusoma. Ningependa kutangaza ya kwamba shule zetu zote za Kenya zitafunguliwa Jumatatu ijayo.
President Ruto says the decision to reopen schools has been informed by reports from the weatherman which indicate the rains in the country will start reducing in intensity in the coming weeks. This therefore means it will be safe for schools to resume normal operation. But questions linger over the fate of schools still submerged and those that are destroyed even after President Ruto assured parents his government will embark on the process of repairing the damaged infrastructure.
All parents are advised on the assessment of weathermen and on the assessment of the government of Kenya. It will now be safe, and we have made adequate arrangements. We have asked members of parliament and we have provided resources through the NGCDF for repair of classrooms and other facilities, learning facilities across Kenya.
The government was forced to postpone the reopening of schools twice due to unprecedented floods that wreaked havoc across the country. The government will now have to work around the clock to ensure those schools that are still submerged in floods are in good condition to receive students for the second term. Tenda Nyula, Lookuptv.
Now, the hearing of an impeachment motion by a select committee to oust the agriculture CS Mithika Linturi on Wednesday kick-started its sessions after receiving and discussing submissions from both sides of CS Mithika Linturi and Bumola MP Jack Wamboka, who tabled the motion supported by 149 MPs against 33 in the National Assembly. Stanley Ligaria tells us more.
The tug of war has become evident between the two opposing parties in fake fertilizer scandal.
If you wish to have a video against this video, bring that video, because you have a chance and the trial is still going on, so that we do not derail this process.
The select committee of 11 members led by Marsabit County Member of Parliament Naomi Wako and Robert Mboy of Kathiani forced to calm down the hot temperatures in the room as both sides fiercely argued their points.
A letter written by P.S. Kiprono Rono, Daktari. Suspend distribution of NPK 102610 fertilizer manufactured by Ken Chemicals Limited. The above matter refers. Following a spot visit by ministry staff led by the Principal Secretary to the counties and National Cereals and Produce Board store, it was established that the above fertilizer being distributed under subsidy program may not be meeting the required standard as indicated earlier.
Submissions from those supporting and those opposing the removal of the CS has witnessed the mention of the names of several leaders in the government, including that of Eldai Member of Parliament Marian Kaitani, whom the opposing side has mentioned as being heavily involved in the fools facing Linturi, whom they allege is funding his removal from office.
Except even before this committee that was called, I was having a discussion with the so-called, with the person that we're referring to as a proxy. One wonders what is it that was being discussed.
Notorious Linturi. If there are serious allegations about him, they are made because they are true. And that's the only danger that I'm warning the committee about. That is the only context in which I tell you, because it is public knowledge, that the man I represent was a victim of that public shaming, public vilification campaign on TV, on whatever.
The legal team defending Mithika, led by lawyer Muthomi Thiankalu, has faulted the other side, insisting that there is no law in the constitution that pegs the CS as the main suspect following the distribution of fake fertilizer to farmers, claims denied by the legal side led by MP Wanami and his lawyer Kaminwa.
Question, I need the chair to make a determination on it, Council. What's the problem with that?
I think it can be helped if he needs to clarify.
Yes.
Okay, we'll proceed as your hands will check.
I think, Chair, the act is an act of parliament, a subsidiary legislation that was made pursuant to the constitution.
It's not being insolent. The questions that are being asked are inappropriate. There are questions that my learned friend could raise in his final submissions.
Stanley Lugaria, Lookuptv, Nairobi.
Now, Friday has been gazetted as a public holiday to honor the victims of floods across the country. This follows the directive issued by President William RUTO, who noted that besides mourning the departed, trees will be planted on the same day in a bid to mitigate the effects of climate change, as George Kaisi now reports.
President William Ruto at a status meeting with grassroots leaders from Kajiado in Lookuptv County officially announced Friday, May 10th as a holiday set to honor victims of the recent floods and promote replanting to address climate change.
Kila Mkenya Ijumaa ijayo tukikumbuka matatizo ambayo tumepata, hata maisha ambayo yamepotea, kwa heshima hiyo na kwa sababu tunajua suluhu kamili ya matatizo haya ya climate change ni kushughulikia mambo ya mazingira.
President Ruto has pledged to lead a national tree planting initiative which is part of an ambitious plan to plant over 15 billion trees by the year 2032.
Serikali nzima Ijumaa hii tarehe 10, sote kama Wakenya tutaungana tupande miti na tujue ya kwamba suluhu kamili ya matatizo ya kiangazi na mafuriko ni kushughulikia mambo yetu ya mazingira.
The president further asked Kenyans in various parts of the country to mark the special day by planting trees, emphasizing the crucial role of the natural resources, particularly forests, in combating climate change.
Na naomba kila Mkenya, mahali ambapo kila Mkenya yupo, tupande miti. Tunataka kama inawezekana tupande miti milioni 200 Ijumaa, ili tuanze safari ya kukabiliana na matatizo ya climate change ama kuharibika kwa mazingira, ndio tuweze kuzuia kiangazi na tuweze kuzuia mafuriko.
Nestled within Kirinyaga County lies the town of Sagana, where a palpable sense of sadness pervades the air, painting a picture of challenging times. It has been a week since Samuel Kamau's vehicle plunged into Sagana River and his body remains trapped inside. Residents of Sagana, aided by local have been tirelessly attempting to recover the body without success. Despite the efforts, even with the help of the Army Disaster Response Team, who spent better part of the day submerged in the waters, the mission remains fruitless. According to Rastas Njoroge, Kamau's best friend, the last phone call ended abruptly after Kamau screamed.
Alinipigia simu akitoka pale Mbona akiingia Sagana, kaniambia tupatane kama tu inakuanga tu kawaida. Lakini kabla call haijaisha ama hiyo mpigo haijaisha, alitoa sauti akasema Mungu Mungu Mungu. Hivyo ndio sauti alitoa na hapo simu ikazima.
Residents were left dismayed when officers left the scene, leaving behind disappointed hopes that the community had counted on their assistance. George Kayesi, Lookuptv.
Now that story by George Kayesi wraps up our news, of course, our news items this particular morning. We'll just take a brief breather, but we'll be back with a conversation now surrounding what's happening in the country, the state of the nation, the doctors' strike, the reopening of schools, as well as the fake fertilizer probe, which is currently underway, whether the select committee, the sessions will enter its second day rather today. We'll be back with that conversation after this short breather.
Save a Life is a non-profit organization that has taken the front line in transforming lives in the entire country. So far, we have transformed life of over 100,000 people through our programs, which include medical support, youth empowerment, street family program, feeding program, and climate change. Join us today as we transform lives. As we always say, service to humanity is service to God. Save a life, transforming lives.
Tuko hapa Kaptara. Tunataka kusema asante sana RUTO Foundation kwa mambo mazuri ambayo wameweza kutufanyia leo. Wakaaji wa hapa Kaptara, wakaaji wa hapa Salawa, wakaaji wa hapa Mujukuo, mpaka wakaaji wote ambao wanatoka hapa Baringo County.
Naambia RUTO Foundation asante kwa kazi nzuri wanayofanya. Mungu awabariki.
Every time you play Lotto, 25% goes to the RUTO Foundation, which supports our fellow Kenyans through various causes. Thank you for your help. Together, We are changing lives.
Are you an SME looking for a media partner? Look no more, as Lookuptv got you covered for all your visibility and marketing needs. We at Lookuptv understand your business needs and want to work with you on your marketing journey, giving you solutions that will take you to the next level. Call us today on 0707 572 358 or send an email to sales@lookuptv.co.ke and kickstart this amazing journey. Welcome to Lookuptv, your official SME media partner.
As the night falls, we come to life to bring you a comprehensive broadcast from the numerous events happening across our 47 counties.
When it breaks, it matters, and each story is important.
If it's Thursday, join me, Nancy Lima, and my able panelists as we break down the law jargons and analyze the Constitution in a way only you can understand.
The news cycle never stops, neither does time. We cover each and every sector and present to you factual and accurate occurrences. This is where facts win the day. Join me,
Nancy Lima,
Ian Keitani, Tuesday, every Wednesday,
Thursday,
as from 9 p.m. on The Insight, only on Lookuptv.
We are sharing on a topic that is entitled functional family, and we agreed and we promise you that we're gonna do part 2.
For a functional family, the two people, the vows they make when they are coming together, those vows, if they are honored, let me tell you, God honors vows. And that family is going to stay together because they are honoring those vows.
If you're a woman of prayer, a woman that is connected with the heart of God, a woman who is zealous to carry out the ideals of God, you'll be able to instill the fear and the reference of God.
If our children are not impacted well in the family, the gadgets they have, the technology is exposing them to a lot of world. We are living at the time of even AI.
We need to look for natural setups that are not threatening, that are not looking like we are waiting until we have a problem. It is when now we are looking for solutions. Healthy and functional families must be running families. They must be aware that we are in the world and we are not of the world.
Kipindi ni ukulima ni mali na Manjoro. Kumbuka, hapa ndipo unajifunza mambo mengi kuhusu ukulima. Kilimo ni uti wa mgongo wa nchi, na ukiwa na Njoro unajifunza. Kumbuka, angalia mwenyewe. Tunakuambia, ukitaka kujua tips za ukulima, ungana na sisi kwenye Lookuptv. Every Sunday unatukuta pale saa 10, tunakuonesha kuhusu ukulima. Ukulima wa mimea, ukulima wa ng'ombe, ukulima wa kuku, ukulima wa mbuzi, na yote ambayo yanahusiana na ukulima. Kumbuka nini? Kipindi ni ukulima ni mali.
Start your day with a workout routine, an exciting moment of exercise that is simple but powerful for your ultimate fitness. Build your strength, shape and body muscles with lunges, push-ups, squats, burpees, planks, dumbbells and more. Let's work out every Monday to Saturday from 6:30 a.m. on Fitness Zone, a one surefire way to attack your fitness regimen effectively. How do you start your engine when it is time to drive? Are you a first-time car buyer or want to upgrade your wheels? Do you know your car brand? Is it powerful, stylish, or does it turn heads as you drive past? Well, let's get to know all about wheels on the Daily Drive Show with Ian Otieno as we review all automobiles inclusively, specs on powertrain, interior, exterior, and pricing. Get on board with Ian Otieno for a dose of automobile scene on Lookuptv.
Well, a very good morning to you. Just in case you're joining us, you're in time for the big conversation here this particular morning. Like I alluded to before we went for the break, is that, there are various issues making headlines across the country this particular morning. Top among them is the doctors, doctors coming to an agreement with the government, and they signed their return to work formula yesterday, as well as the issue of fake fertilizer with Agriculture CS Mithika Linturi facing the select committee, the 11-member committee selected to, of course, hear that particular case and submit its report in 10 days. Now, this particular morning, joining me to have discussion in regards to the state of the nation and more specifically the issues I've mentioned, as well as the reopening of schools, is Mr. Ken Babu, the National Youth Leader, National Youth League President for the DAP Party. Very good morning to you, sir.
Good morning.
Pleasure having you around.
Thank you.
Now, next is Mr. Nick Mwadime Mwangi, the chairman of the Nairobi Jubilee Party League. A very good morning to you, sir.
Good morning.
Thank you very much for making time to be
Thank
with us.
you so much for the invite.
And of course, to my far right is Mr. Njoroge Kiriro, the an advocate of the High Court and a political analyst. Now, I want us to begin this conversation, gentlemen, with the issue of, the fake fertilizer. And talking about fertilizer, I want to begin with you, Mr. Ken Babu. First of all, with where the probe is at the moment, the stage, because the forming of the 11-member committee comes after the 149 MPs voted in favor of the motion by Bomula MP Jack Wamboka. Now, there are certain quarters who, at this particular moment in time, are wary whether Linturi will be impeached or not, because most people argue the committee way looks like a way to save him, as compared to going fully the plenary way. From where you sit, where do you first of all assess that particular hearing in terms of whether Linturi will be impeached or not, with the stage that the conversation is at the moment?
Thank you so much, Keitani, my brother. First, I want to appreciate the fact that we have converged as young people to discuss this issue, because going fast forward, the majority that are affected are the young people, because we are in the farming anyway. And I can tell you that the direction that this thing has taken, Linturi is likely to retain the seat. The parliament voted, and it communicated. It did made a communication that as a house, we've lost confidence in this guy. But again, we take the trajectory of the committee with few numbers than those who voted in the parliament. And it means what are we still discussing in the committee that had not been discussed in parliament before the voting? Because for the voting to be placed at the parliament, members had time to look at the allegations, discuss and engage. In fact, they even engaged with the CS, and the samples of the fertilizers were brought to parliament before the voting, and then they voted unanimously, saying that this guy, we've lost confidence in him. I think the right thing that should have happened is just to, the CS, in respect to himself, resign or take a step back and give a space for further interrogation and maybe investigation, so that we can get, because at the end of the day, what we want as people is to get the root cause. This fertilizer was fake. The president acknowledged that it was fake. who are the people involved in this? And let me tell you, it is only in as much as Linturi is now carrying the cross. He is not the only person. In fact, he should now tell us who are these other guys, because Linturi is the CS. He might have, he must have, had the information of the people who supply the fertilizers. But the people, the suppliers themselves as well, should take responsibility. And that's why the issue of wife is coming in. Because if you look at that thing, the whole story, there's somewhere in between where the wife is coming in. There's a company, I don't know, it's Kales or something. There's a company that supplied those fertilizers, where the wife or the brother-in-law, the brother of the wife or somebody is associated too. So everybody who is associated, who is involved in this process, should take responsibility. And let me just say that Jack Wamboka is my MP. He is a member of parliament elected under the ticket of DAPK. And he mentioned yesterday that this is not a personal war, and I can confirm that it is not a personal war. Wamboka is a farmer. Wamboka comes from Bungoma, where the backbone of that community is farming. So what he's pushing for is not a personal discourse. It's an issue of the community and the farmers across the country. But Linturi as well should be listened to. You know, we have to look at it from both sides. If the CS is going home, he should be given an opportunity to say, I'm going home, but this thing is not an individual mistake.
Okay,
these are the people who are involved, and those people should also take responsibility.
Fair enough. Mr. Mwadime, do you agree with Ken Babu that indeed, in as much as Linturi is part of the mess, he's not the only one? There could be a bigger fish in the fake fertilizer scandal.
Well, Keitani, one thing I want to agree with my ASG, Jeremiah Kioni, this is a nation of national disaster. It's a government of disaster. And I don't sympathize at all with the government of the day, because the president knew it from the word go when he decided to vet incompetent cabinet secretaries. And it is quite sad, because where I come from, the mountain, we heavily rely on farming. And what my good friend Babu is saying, that this is a scheme to play the people, because the people expect, it's like a game of charades. What do the people expect? Linturi is summoned, he's taken through grilling, then members of parliament again vote based on which side they allege to, right? Whether it's Kenya Kwanza, whether it is Azimio. But that's beside the point. And I'm looking at it in this angle. This is an issue of the politics of Meru County, because I can clearly see where it all began. We saw Kawera Mwangaza joining UDA. Sooner than later, the troubles of Mithika Linturi started. And I know Linturi is a very hard man to dangle with. And this, I think, to my own opinion, it's a form to put him in line by the man on the top. Because he knows that agriculture is the backbone of this country. He traveled, I said it here the other day, he traveled all the way to Uasin County and convinced his people that the fertilizer that is on the ground is fake. But here comes Mithika Linturi saying that the fertilizer is not fake. But I know this is a man that, as you look at his body language, he seemed to be set up. He found himself in a situation whereby he cannot get out.
Well, fair enough. But if at all you feel probably it's because you've talked about the issue of agriculture. Now, food security is one of President William Ruto's key agenda. Now, many people argue, including Azimio Umoja, that indeed if the president was genuine in ensuring that the country is food secure, he ought to have taken action on Linturi a long time ago. I
totally agree with you. And you see, right from the word go, how competent was Linturi for that position? These are the issues that we are supposed to be discussing. When we are going through vetting, did we discover right today that he went through EACC process and no single amount of alleged corruption file that was placed before Linturi. This is a man who has a track record of being corrupt. The president chose to work with him. Today, the president is so silent about this issue because he knows that he made a mistake entirely in vetting or having a whole cabinet. Let me say, 3/4 of the cabinet seems to be very incompetent people. And I agree with Babu, in mature democracies, such CS should immediately resign. But we've found ourselves in a situation whereby we depend on agriculture. Farmers in Mount Kenya, farmers in Rift Valley, and farmers across the country.
Fair enough. Mr. Njoroge, agriculture, like Mr. Modimo has talked about, is the backbone, of our economy. I don't know if you agree with him that, the president ought to have taken action, because it's been more than 2 months now, almost 3, since the issue was really raised, and the fact that the CS remained adamant that there was no fake fertilizer. In fact, at some point he said it's only substandard fertilizer. There's no much difference. If it's substandard, it means it's not the right fertilizer. It means it's fake. To the point where he now came back to admit that indeed, probably there was fake fertilizer. And he's now attributing the entire impeachment saga to, his ex-wife, Marian Ketani. First of all, do you think the MP is involved?
But I think the common denominator here is that Kenya continuously grapples with improper procurement facilities, supply chain management when it comes to subsidy programs, not only in the Ministry of Agriculture. But it's sad that whatever is happening now is actively affecting the backbone of our country in a time where floods are also coming in as a problem for farmers. So perhaps what right now we should look at as a nation is to streamline the processes of distribution of these fertilizers in such a way that is transparent, not only for the people there at the top who is the president, the CS, and all the county units involved in these processes, but also for the people who are receiving these fertilizers. Because you can imagine if this was not brought to Parliament, it was shut down just like any other issue brought up, so many people would have suffered, so many livelihoods would have been destroyed, which are already actively being destroyed because someone actively decided to, give the country fake fertilizer. So we wait for the report on Monday that will come in the special sitting. Once the verdict is given, then Linturi should, for me, I believe that if he's found culpable, him and his team should leave and give us, credible evidence of other people who have been involved in that. So it can be a lesson to not only other CSs who are holding such high positions of power, but also to the citizens of Kenya to allow them to practice their democracy.
Most people argue that, we've seen, select committees being formed before, and most likely the outcome is usually, the same. Mm-hmm. It's almost, sort of predetermined. Do you have faith with that particular 11-member committee? Because if you look at the debate in Parliament, the top leadership in Parliament, led by the majority leader Kimani Ichung'wah, and a host of other MPs from specifically the central region, defended Mithika Linturi. In fact, they rubbished the impeachment motion tabled by Mr. Wamboka. But it now puts the ruling coalition in some sort of catch-22 situation, because most of the legislators from Rift Valley voted in support of the motion. Now, what happens if at all the committee decides that Linturi is not guilty?
I think first you have to look at the goodwill already that is there in the committee, that is led by Honorable Naomi Wako. And the first thing that perhaps for me was a good sign that this thing is transparent and it's going to actually provide credible reports that we can view as Kenyans and analyze whether our members of Parliament are actually making a rational decision about it, is the fact that she was able to support the idea of bringing in witnesses under Standing Order 191 and our Article 125 of the Constitution of Kenya. And by that virtue of her or the committee in its whole self giving, the public, because they are representing us at the end of the day, giving the public a chance to actually hear from witnesses, even though they have not come using the motion, that's a good sign. So that's why I'm saying it's important for us to wait for the report that will come. The predetermined actions or results we are expecting, we cannot talk about them until the report is out. It's put in front of, Parliament, and then from there Kenyans will be able to see if actually this Parliament cares about us. Because if the report is damaging to Linturi's reputation and is actually evident that, this fake fertilizer has been there and it directly links to him, if they decide to retain him or if he continues being CS, then that should give you, kind of like a sign of where the country is heading to, and that's a bad sign, No. So, yeah, let's wait for Monday.
Fair enough. Mr. Babu, now, the first day of the hearing, which was yesterday, was marred with not really the key issue, the issue of fake fertilizer. It was marred with, the issue of Marian Kitani, the ex-wife, and all that. In fact, at some point, the MP, Mr. Omboka, told Linturi, stop dragging your ex-wife into this. Ukiachwa ashika. Now, at the end of the day, regardless of the outcome, whether he stays in office or the committee recommends that, he should be impeached, what does it mean for the president in terms of the CSs he has appointed? Because like Mr. Mwadime has attributed to, there are many questions regarding those who are appointed by President William Ruto to lead various dockets in his cabinet.
I think the president should just put into consideration the aspect of meritocracy and line of passion and professionalism. Linturi's background is not in agriculture. Linturi is in insurance and everything, all that. So what is he doing in the agriculture in the agriculture department? And then if you look at the ministry as well, very few people are in that sector. So I think what this should be a learning opportunity for the president, so that in the reshuffle or in the next appointment that he's going to do, he should factor in professionalism. That if I am appointing Keitani, for instance, I'm appointing you to be a CS for health or agriculture, your professionalism should be in that line, so that if you go in, you understand what you need to do. The little deeds you need to partake for the success of that department. If the ministry is failing, the president is failing, because the ministry is in charge of delivering the president's manifesto. So if the ministry is procuring fake fertilizers or the ministry is distributing fake items, then it means it's the president who's doing that, because this is an agent of the president. Get that? For instance, in a family setup, if the son who is supposed to take over the father's empire is doing things contrary, then this guy is representing the father in a different, in a way that it should not happen. So if the ministry is failing, then it means the president's manifesto is not being implemented. I think this is a learning process, and this is a learning phase, and the president should pick notes, so that in the event that he's reshuffling these guys, or he wants to appoint somebody else, number one, we should put people in the places of their professionalism, areas where they understand well. Number two, we should employ the meritocracy, that just as my brother mentioned. If you have cases, my friend, hakuna mtu ana kesi, nobody doesn't have case, but there are certain level of cases that should not be allowed. Such people should not be allowed to hold certain offices. And this brings us to the issue of even the recent appointments of ambassadors. We have people who are cleared, and there are issues, if you go even deep to the ground, the things they did are still affecting the common mwananchi, but they were cleared by EACC to be as clean as white as snow, just to secure jobs. So there's a problem. We have a problem with honesty and meritocracy. How are we putting people into place, into powers? We factor in our interests first, and then now just leave everything for the rest. But the issue, there's one thing that we must all agree. We cannot, in as much as Wamboka was shying off the issue of Marian Keitani, and I saw some members of parliament as well, we cannot separate Marian Keitani, Mithika Linturi, and the fake fertilizer. The three are in tandem. Because if you look at that story very well from the onset up to where it is, Miriam Keitany appears more than 5 times. And there's a company, amongst the companies that supply that fertilizer, that she is associated. If you're associated to a company, if that company fails, you are part of the problem.
Now, Mr. Mwadime, whatever Mr. Wabu is talking about, now, one of the things that Linturi is accused of is, at some point after the issue now gathered pace, he visited the Kel Chemicals, the company, and it was shut down eventually. But the chief operations officer rather of Kel Chemicals company, while appearing before the Agricultural Committee, the National Assembly, now he said he implicated, and he didn't mention names, but he said key officials in government from State House are rather involved in this particular scandal. And he talked about how they had a meeting with senior officials from NCPB, from KEBS, including Madam Esther Ngari. Now, he said he's the sacrificial lamb. The company is the sacrificial lamb. Again, the question remains, do you feel that is, genuine concern or genuine, a question raised by Mr. The Chief Operating Officer or Operations Officer rather, or is it just, just shifting goalposts in terms of, averting the issues at hand, because the company was adversely mentioned in that particular case?
Well, I want to agree with the CEO, because what I cannot stop but think, where is the PS of Agriculture in all this story? Where is Dr. Paul Rono? He's a PS of Agriculture. Why is it that he's not summoned at the parliament? Why is it that Mithika Linturi is taking the entire fault? I want to totally agree with the CEO. The president is almost confirming to us that this entire government is being run at the State House. That he's micromanaging all ministries. And it's a very sad state, because I know for a fact that the president will not allow the entire impeachment process of the CS4 Agriculture, because he's quite aware that if this process succeeds, then the Kenyans, through the MPs, will come for his job.
Okay, fair enough. Coming to you, Mr. Njoroge, Mr. Mwadime has talked about, Mr. RUTO's cabinet, and the fact that also is attributed the recent appointments, ambassadors and high commissioners. Now, if at all there are questions regarding, the appointees of the president who underwent vetting, if there are questions on them or regarding those appointees, does it also mean there's an issue with, those who are, mandated with vetting these people? Because if you look at during the vetting, several questions were raised regarding various CSs, not only Mithika Linturi. And in fact, yesterday at the Senate, Mr. Boni Halwale, the senator for Kakamega, reprimanded senators allied to the ruling coalition, because he said the issue with the senators allied to the ruling coalition is that they support everything brought to the House by the government. But that is not what they were elected to do. So is there a loophole in terms of, you don't call it some sort of oversight, because they're there to represent monarchy. They're there to ensure that whoever is appointed has the best interests of Kenyans at heart. Now, have they also failed in their mandate?
I think it just goes back to, what you normally say, that most members of parliament are good at one thing. They are good at voting, okay? But they're not good at implementing their main functions as an oversight, among other issues. So that's why you find yourself in a scenario where someone has been nominated and they actively step out of the vetting process because they know they're not competent. So you go back and you ask yourself, okay, then what does this mean? Does it mean that Kenya doesn't have qualified people for these jobs? No. What it means is that, as my colleague has said, the micromanagement of these aspects to the level that members of parliament are 100% affiliated to their party colors before the interest of their people is the issue. So that's why the problem still stems back to the electorate itself. Are you going to vote for someone just because he's in this political party, or because he has a track record of actually improving the livelihood of the community, or just has the well-being of the community? If we start from there, we cure this disease up there. Because the moment you receive, as an electorate, the moment you receive a bribe to elect person X into power, and they go there and oversight, they vote according to what they've been told to do by the head of state, there's nothing else you're going to get as a person down there in the community. So it's not only a people problem, but it's also a social problem that we need to address as Kenyans. We need to look at it holistically. You know, we can't just limit it to the fact that a certain member of parliament or a senator, you know, or a governor is not doing their job. It's you as a person in that county. Did you do your job to elect the right person? You know, from that conversation, we can now move forward to the merit this person has, whether this person is actually carrying out oversight effectively, you know. But apart, if we don't get there, we'll just keep on repeating the same cycle after every election and expect different results.
Now, I think just to add on what Wakili is saying, okay. I think it's very crucial that we put this conversation to the ground, so that we get the people get to understand that the moment you make the wrong decision at the ballot, it will come down back to you. It doesn't matter. Because if you look at the time the vetting of these CSS was happening, the members of parliament were so overwhelmed. I don't know. I mean, the guys were too happy with that. There was no critical dissemination of and dissection of who is this guy and what. I mean, I don't know what was happening. And then if you look at the composition of parliament, the ruling party was, is the majority. So if you are the majority and you are the one vetting the person, and there's an order from above, what do you do about it? So what Wakili is saying is very important. We have to, as the people of the ground, we have to get understand that if we make the mistake at the ballot, we're not going to run away from the effect of it. It will take time, but it will come and feed on us. And Orengo once said that the government eats its own people. Now what we are facing today on fertilizers, it is the government that we put in place that is now eating on us. I think we should not complain. We just need to ensure that in the next election cycle, we do the right thing.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah. Let's shift gears from matters, agriculture and, the fake fertilizer to the issue of, flooding situation in the country. And let me just begin with you, because the president said yesterday schools should be reopened on Monday, the 13th of May, 2024. Now, questions have been raised regarding the state of preparedness. Of course, the issue of preparedness has been a key bone of contention in terms of, when it comes to the government. There are questions regarding its preparedness to, the flooding situation, despite the fact that there were warnings from, the Met Department. But now, various hundreds of schools, were damaged, infrastructure was damaged by, the floods in the country. And in the local daily this morning, they're talking about 14 schools in Teso, only 14 schools, which translates to around 10,000 students being affected. Do you feel the government has, you don't want to really call it rush, but, you just call it what it is, because if at all infrastructure is not ready, the schools have not been renovated, then where are those students going to learn?
I think you should not be shy from calling it rush. It is indeed a rush. Yeah. You should not be shy from calling it. It is a rush, a serious one. Because let me tell you, I came from Kisumu on Sunday, and I want to confirm to you that the whole of Nyando constituency has turned into a lake. In fact, those guys are living in the lake. Now you can, if that is a whole constituency with about 30 schools, is in that mess. And then you are talking about Maimayu, talking about, it is a rush. There is no, it's not an issue of emergency for people to go to school. And unless you are dead, you still have an opportunity to go to school. Look at that. We had some time, there's a time, I think in 2022, where at one point the NAT Secretary General held, a strike, teacher strike, for a whole year, 12 months. But after that, guys went to school. And the system was choreographed and people came to the system and learned. Let me tell you, it is very sad. And if you look at the news reports that we are having, in as much as you guys are not giving us the real thing that's on the ground, I don't know why you are shy. It is a rush. You are not giving us the real thing on the ground. We people on the ground can tell you.
The fact that on the local daily there is the issue of just 10,000 students affected in Teso alone.
Teso alone.
Yeah, paints a picture of we're trying to paint the picture.
And this thing is countrywide.
Yes.
What the president said, yes, people should be in school, but it is a rush. The situation outside there does not favor the students, does not favor the staffs, does not favor anybody. to be in those learning institutions. Number one, the classes are down. These learning materials are down. Look at Mathare. Those people who are evicted, they've lost everything. Books, everything, uniform, everything. Now, that person, how are they going to go back to school? We're not even talking about the school itself now. We're talking about the people who should go to school. They don't have any learning material. Now go to the school itself. Some of the schools have been demolished. Some of the schools have been swept away by waters. Where these guys, and somewhere in Kisumu County, people who are moved by floods were taken to school to stay there. They don't have any place to stay up to now. You are taking back people to school. Where are they going to get shelter from? They have to be considered shelter for the students and for the parents whose homes were flooded, number one. Number two, the schools in which they are staying today, if they are moved out, what are they going to? And the schools they are staying in are also flooded. Get that?
Mm-hmm. Fair enough.
The president ought to have just relaxed, like he communicated further notice, and ensure that everything is sorted. You mentioned something about the CDF. Let me just touch on the CDF.
Okay.
The CDF is not something new that came yesterday when the president talked about it. It has been there. And one of the responsibility of the CDF is to ensure that there is proper infrastructural development in the schools. I can tell you for a fact that there are schools in this country, and the management, board of management can tell you that they've never seen anything put into place in terms of CDF.
Okay.
Now, if the president is talking about, as we've put in this, the infrastructure development will be, the repairs will be done through the CDF and the MPs. Let's be honest to each other. CDF has been in existence. Nothing has happened. Serious. Nothing is going to happen in the next 14 days. So we are hoping in school on 13th. That is about 4. There's nothing much we're going to do with the next 4 days. The president needs to call off this issue of schooling. We are not saying that we don't love schools, but there must be proper safety measures to ensure that our sons and daughters are doing well.
Fair enough. Mr. Mwadime, like Mr. Ken Bobo attributes or talks about NJCDF. We know ensuring that infrastructure development in schools and such areas is well developed. That is one of their key mandates. But at this particular moment in time, should the president probably have taken lead in terms of ensuring that the government leads the national government, let alone waiting for NGCDF and all that. The way the government has provided 1 billion for mitigating the effects of floods, should the government have probably just pumped in money, because we're having just a 3-day period, a 3-day window to ensure that the infrastructure is up to standard, renovations are done, and like he also says, where are these people who've been affected by floods going to, because they are currently hosted in various schools in the country?
I think my main concern, Ketan, as I told you earlier, I don't know. It's either the president does not listen to advice from his CS, or people advise him wrongly. But it's become more vivid and more clear that he's operating everything on State House. Ketan.
Yes.
Because I want to imagine what Babu is saying the people of Nyando are experiencing a lake situation. And we here, the people of Nairobi, we have seen the incidents in Mathare. And I want to imagine how feasible it will be for primary schools, for secondary schools, even campuses and colleges. I want to imagine a situation whereby the president recently was in Mathare. He promised the people of Mathare 1 billion shillings. I want to imagine another situation whereby 17 billion shillings was allocated for floods and disaster. That was not used. That was not being accounted for. I want to imagine that the taxpayers' money is being used, but not used for the people. I want to imagine a situation whereby, Ketani, that the president is now throwing the members of parliament under the bus by saying that there is CDF. Let me tell you where I'm coming from. The CDF, approximately every year, it's budgeted of around, let me say 200 million. That's what the MPs receive. As we speak, the MPs have already allocated or have already issued bursaries to their constituents. Where I come from, people receive a minimum Mount Kenya, because our population is high, a minimum of around 3,000 to 5,000 Kenya shillings. How will that sustain its population, number one? How will that sustain primary schools, secondary schools, or even campuses? That's why I want to repeat what my SG is saying. Education sector, disaster. Floods, disaster. JKIA, disaster.
Agriculture.
Health, disaster. Agriculture, disaster.
Okay.
We are living in a country whereby previously, 1 year ago, they said that it's the azimio people, we didn't want them to work. It's 1 year down the line, Ketan, we don't see their work.
Okay.
Will you still blame the people?
Fair enough, a pertinent question. But coming to you, Akili, now, as the president, really, because as Mr. Mwadime puts it, it's an issue of, do the MPs at the moment have the funds? Because this is not something that was probably planned for. This is an emergency. And you expect funds for such emergencies to come from the national government, in as much as, because at this moment in time, just a few days ago, there was an MP from Western region, and he was allocating bursaries, and he was saying each and every student from the constituency, regardless of whether who is schooling in the constituency, will get a bursary of 3,000 shillings. Let's assume he meant his word, and all the students got 3,000 shillings. Then really, do they have the funds to ensure that all the dilapidated infrastructure in all the schools are renovated and the schools are up to standard? Or should the government, national government, have taken the lead and disburse more funds to ensure that within the 3-day period, schools are ready?
Keitani, it's important to first appreciate the efforts that are being made right now by the government, because as we've all agreed, it's an emergency. That's number one. Number two, the emergency is not solely based in Kenya. It is a global issue. Okay, climate change is a global issue, and there are mechanisms that are there to help developing countries like us, who bear the brunt of, the brunt of climate change because of the emissions and the pollutions by the global north. The national government already has money set aside for emergencies. But this specific emergency, the floods disaster that we're having as a country, is unprecedented. Okay? Remember, we've just come from drought, the worst that has been seen in the country. Okay? Now we are going to a very catastrophic flood that was was well anticipated, but not to the extent that it has come. So what the national government should do right now is put in, just the same way we did like during COVID. There's a short-term, medium-term, and long-term measures. The short-term and the medium-term measures, we are still struggling, because even if you look at the reports from organizations such as the Kenya Red Cross, they have received funding close to around 1 billion. But what is needed as of now for the short-term, resolution of this disaster is around 7 billion, 8 billion. When you look at the UNFCCC, the United Nations Framework on Climate Change, there's something we call the Loss and Damage Fund. The Loss and Damage Fund is actively supposed to help countries in the global south or developing countries to be able to mitigate the effects of climate change. But have these countries, funded the Loss and Damage Fund? No. So we cannot blame the inefficiency when it comes to resources or when it comes to mitigating these effects to solely how RUTO is doing it or how the government is doing it. No. I don't think if Azimio was in the same situation, they'd have handled it differently. Remember, even when you're going through COVID, people still didn't go to school for 8 months. But there was a strategy in place. So perhaps what the government needs to consider...
Just hold on.
Yes.
You said for 8 months, right?
Yes.
That begs the question. Should probably the president, would have waited for, let's give it a month, even, for the situation to really subside?
Yes, I believe so, because the weatherman has already forecasted that these long rains are from March, April, May. So use May to view how the weather is going. Because right now, he's using the forecast, there's a 5-day forecast nowadays. That is what the meteorological department is giving us as a country. So the last phase of that 5-day forecast is what the government is using to, open schools again. But if I was in the same position, perhaps what I'd have done, I'd have given May as a month to, rehabilitate, reconstruct, re-strategize. So that by June, July, now students can comfortably, go back to school. Those in ECDs, those in VTCs can be able to access these services easier. Because right now, if students go back to school on Monday, we have a heavy downpour on Thursday. What are we doing? Have we solved the issue?
We're going to pray.
Fair enough. Before I come to you, Mr. Ken Babu, yes. I want to ask you one more question, Wakili, because we've agreed it's an emergency, but from where you sit, I want to know, pick your mind on the government response, because last year we were anticipating El Nino rains, and there was a debate surrounding funding. And the DP was on the spot because he said the government released 10 billion. 10 billion. Then he backtracked and said county governments should not, expect money from the national government. Now, from that period, the Met Department has been, consistently advising the country and the government more so specifically because they're the ones responsible of the situation. But again, we were caught off guard. So how do you assess the government's response and preparedness, rather?
I'd give the government right now, as of now, out of 10, I'd probably give them a rating of 5. Because remember, emergencies such as this is not only the government, also the non-state actors come in play. And the value that these people bring is immense. You cannot even compare it to what the government, imagine if we didn't have Red Cross right now. Would the government, with its own units and entities, manage this effectively? I doubt. So there's much that can be done, and no one prepares you for emergencies. But how you handle the situation is what matters. So the small decisions that are being made right now, such as the reopening of schools, is what makes me lower the ratings for how this thing is being handled. Because you cannot put someone's life at risk. Education will always be there, but you cannot resuscitate a life that has gone. You cannot bring back a student who has died because of floods.
Yes.
So we have to focus on people-based solutions. Okay, not government-based solutions. Because the government would like to see people going to school. We are happy as a government. There's still education. But the mother in the village who has a young daughter or son going to school in the morning, and then it rains at around 11, what happens to those people who cannot afford, helicopters and, all those boats that we see around to help these people?
Fair enough.
Just Keitani, to put more emphasis on what Wakili is saying there. We live in different setups, and I can tell you for a fact that some places in the villages, children trek for very long distance to go to school, and some even cross the bridges to go to school. And with the flooding and the rains that we are experiencing, it will not be advisable as at now. And like you mentioned, the meteorological department has communicated, yes, we agree, but the president needs to take time. We are in May. We can use the entire month to analyze the situation so that in the next June or July, so you can go to school. And I said earlier on that education is there. We will go to school. We are not afraid of learning. We will go, we will do it. But let us do it when it is safe for us to do it. So that at the end of the day, when you can reap the benefits of you going to school. It is a big risk taking students to school right now. It may rain. Just like you mentioned, unaweza enda shule asubuhi, mchana kunyesha vibaya sana, classes ziwaangukie, ama mtoke, you leave school and then you find that the bridge you used to come to school has been swept away. So what do you do? So I think the president needs to take time and maybe suspend the education for the whole of May. But from June, July, we can go back to school.
Okay, Mr. Madiwe.
What I don't seem to understand, Keitani, is, as my good friend is saying, this was an emergency, right? But this was a foreseen emergency. What was the government? What has it been doing all this time? Who did we put on these roles? Does it mean that the CS for education, the PS for education are not doing their jobs? Because we are forcing the kids to go to school. Where are those classes as we speak? Where are the chalkboard? Because our teachers they're still, as he says, we still use chalkboards. They are wet. What is the plan?
Okay.
You understand?
Okay.
And apart from that, let's also be very realistic. These kids go to school. They need to feed. How will they feed? Their parents have been dislocated to different areas. They're no longer living in their homes. So the entire situation as it is, it looks a mess.
Okay. Now, gentlemen, we've talked about, the infrastructure. But now, in terms of safety, starting with you, Mr. Ken Babu, is that, now, yesterday alone, now, as at yesterday at, around 5 when the government spokesperson was issuing an update on the issue of, on the state of floods in the country, 24 hours before, 19 people had lost their lives across the country to floods. Now, to put it into perspective is that 14 of those were adults. 5 were children. Now, again, the issue of safety. Because if as it stands, people are still losing their lives to floods, then it means we're still in a dire situation.
Yeah, sure. Kitan, let me tell you, and I want to be very categorical. And I say that we are unsafe. We are very unsafe. Talking about 14 adults and 5 children, then that tells you that it brings us back to the main issue here is the issue of the matter of school reopening. Because from home, the parents will take care. But again, if you are dying from home, you are dying, the floods are sweeping us from our homesteads. You as a parent, how comfortable will you be? Your kid goes to school, a 12-year-old son or daughter goes to school, and then you start seeing drizzling. The pressure, you get that?
Okay.
Number 2, we are not safe. Why am I saying we are not safe? The floods that have been experienced of late, even in Nyando, was not as a result of rain in Nyando. There was no rains in Nyando. But eventually, the river breaks the banks, and it's flooding everywhere. Just hear some noise from the neighborhood. Oh, water, water! Step out, at your doorstep, you are in the lake. Get that? Now you can imagine a situation where your kid went to school, maybe 5 kilometers away from home, and then just get some rumors that there is flooding at that side. As a parent, what do you do? So we still go back to the issue of the urgency, and we are asking the question: is it too urgent for these kids to be sent back to school? And if the kids are going back to school, those people who are living in school today, whose homes were swept away, where are they going to be placed? And like Wakili mentioned, Red Cross has received $1 billion shillings. And yesterday, I think 2 days ago, we had the Secretary General of Red Cross or something saying that they have 290,000 cases of affected people countrywide. So the question is, we don't have enough, we have not allocated enough resources to the emergency rescue team. And we are talking about exposing kids who cannot help themselves in the event that floods now erupts. What are we doing? We are putting trouble into trouble. So the president, as I finalize, the president should recall the reopening of schools.
Okay.
The president should hold on and take a look into this 1 month. How are things going to happen? And like he mentioned, this was a foreseen emergency. We all knew that it will rain, and it's still going to rain. So we just need to take time and put things to order and see how we can take these kids back to school. Build classes, put in enough resources, ensure that the safety is well catered for, so that when we are taking back our kids to school, the students and the staffs are more comfortable and safe.
Fair enough. Before I come to you, Mr. Modime, I want to get to pick your mind, Wakili, on, there's been a conversation because the president was it on Tuesday? Yes, on Tuesday, if I'm not wrong, visited Mathare, where, it was the first place where people were, displaced because of floods, and several people lost their lives. Because in fact, on the first day, on the first night that the rains started pouring in, 10 people lost their lives. Now, the president said the government will offer rent to those affected by floods, and he said each family will be given 10,000 Kenya shillings. Now, 10,000, 3 months rent. The opposition has questioned that. And even from where you sit, do you feel that is enough to help these families in such a time?
Keitani, even if I give you $1 million shillings right now, it won't be enough for you. Okay? So the first thing we must recognize is that there'll never be enough money for whatever activity or thing you want to do.
Well, I'm asking that because let's just pick an example. There's somebody who lost everything.
Yes.
Literally everything. He's just standing. No house, no nothing, no furniture, no nothing. 10,000 to pay rent.
I'm getting there.
No food, no nothing.
I'm getting there. Of course, 10,000 for majority of these families and livelihoods that have been affected by these floods is definitely not enough. Okay? And remember, the opposition came up and said that for them, they want the amount to be appreciated to amounts of 100,000. Now, one thing we need to ask ourselves, what is the rationale, behind the president coming out and stating that he's going to give families affected are going to receive 10,000 shillings? Is it empathy? Is it strategy? Is it a solution? It is not a solution, okay? It is a gesture. It is a positive gesture in that situation. He's in Mathare. Majority of those people live monthly using their budget of around 10,000 or even less sometimes.
Interesting. Let me just, interrupt you kidogo, because you say it is a gesture. It's not a solution.
Yes.
But it's a gesture from an office that Kenyans expect solutions to come from. He's the president.
Yes.
He's the head of government.
Yes.
Kenyans expect solutions from the government. Now, how do you really term that as a gesture? If it was from an organization, you term that probably as a gesture. But from the government, Kenyans need solutions.
No. I mean, let me take you back to the period when we had COVID. A country like America was able to actually provide a certain stipend or amount of money to its citizens.
Correct.
Not to help them, continue living, but to help them in that situation at the moment, because it's an emergency. It's something that was unforeseen, just to help them, stabilize as the government continues, trying to mitigate this catastrophic, effects of this floods. If you look at the 10,000 that has been, given as a directive, rather, let me not say a directive, but let's say the president gave a gesture of the same. It is not, as I've said, substantive for any livelihood that has been affected by floods, especially if they have lost everything, including their, part of their families, their houses, and everything. But as I said earlier, this flood cannot be solved by just money. I cannot solve someone's livelihood in Kisumu or in Mathare by just giving them money and telling them that will sort this issue of flood. But I said it is a positive gesture to those people on the ground, because it shows the government is in touch with the reality that this flood is affecting them. They don't have a source of income. They don't have a place to stay. But you know what? As we try and solve this, let's try and give you, something small to push you. It's better that than never. You'd agree with me. Because you can imagine if it was a situation where now the floods have happened, there's no sort of, fiscal value that is being given to these people to help them, also just get their life, somewhat in order. We'd have also complained as a country. We'd have said the government is not doing enough, and it will never be enough.
I can see Mr. Mwadime is itching to say something.
Yeah, I think, on my opinion, this is a man who campaigned on a policy of Mama Mboga and Vijana wa Boda Boda. He promised Mama Mboga and Vijana wa Boda Boda to be in cabinet. Me and you, Keitani, today can attest that there is no Mama Mboga and Vijana wa Boda Boda in cabinet, right? What I see the president doing is a campaign trail. COVID was serious, yet at that point of time, we didn't receive any amount of funds. No Kenyan can report that the government at that point of time received any amount of funds. I want to imagine that this president will do a Moses miracle in State House or in Mathare, ensuring that thousands of people in Mathare receive 10,000 shillings. I want to be sure that the president will not even remove even a single bob to those people.
What makes you so certain?
Because Mathare is a very popular place to vote. Mathare is as Babu will tell you, is an azimio. One of the azimios stronghold. And to be specific, one of the ODM stronghold. So what me as the president, now him as the president, does he need to say to excite the people? And you could clearly see, Keitani, the body language of the people. They were not so much excited about 10,000 shillings.
Let me ask, is it really fair if we reduce that particular visit by the president and the pronouncement of 10,000 shillings to return it into political?
2 weeks, Keitani, where was the president? Months later, did he not know that Mathare will flood? What plans was he making for the people of Mathare? A gesture will be, Keitani, the president coming in with blankets and food. Not promises of 10,000 shillings. That's a gesture. I want you to imagine the kids in Mathare, or the people in Mathare, floods bring in waterborne diseases. Where the medic that he came with, there's no medical camp that was done in Mathare. Or did you see any that I missed? Keitani. So this is a man again making fake promises, exciting a lot of emotions to the people of Mathare.
Now, in Swahili they say, heri nusu shari kuliko shari kamili.
And I'm saying, there's no that even nusu shari, because we have not seen it yet.
But like Mr. Njoroge, says, you ought to, probably give some bit of credit, because the government has chipped in as much as there are questions regarding the intensity of them chipping in and how that 10,000 will help. The president said they'll provide food and all that.
The president, and I'm saying the president has been saying a lot of things for the last 2 years. We as the common mwananchi are feeling that pain, Keitani. The president is making again promises and promises. He said it 2 years ago when he was campaigning. He's now on the seat. He looks as if he's still campaigning.
Mr. Ken Babu, is it fair to reduce the president's visit to into some sort of a political how do you term it? Using it as a political tool or vehicle or whatever.
The president as a person might be having good intentions, but now the people who pick the information from his side are the ones that are distorting the everything. Because if you look at a poster that was designed immediately the president left Mathare, you'll be surprised, my brother. It explains what Mwadime is saying. I saw it where the president was
in Gamboots.
Yes. And you get that, and walked into into a house and was having a chit chat with those guys. If you look at that thing and how the people within the system of the government were now trying to put it, it appeared like it's a campaign season, and how the president appears in. Those are people who have lost lives, they have lost property, they have lost relatives. You know that? If it's an issue of assisting them, then it should be intentional and proper. The government has many ways of assisting those guys. And let's be honest, Keitani, you walk from this place, you find your household swept by floods. And as the president, I come and tell you, I'm going to give you 10,000 to find a livelihood. What is that? What is that?
Before you chip in fairness to the president, is that he said they'll be given that money, but the government will immediately start construction of around 20,000 units in Kibra, Kiamaiko to, of course.
We have affordable houses that are almost complete. Why can't the president just say, let me give these guys houses?
Let me ask a simple question.
Okay.
Will they be given those houses for free?
The president, in his words, not mine, they'll pay 3,000 Kenya shillings as rent.
Come on.
In his words, not mine.
We are paying 1.5 tax. As a matter of fact, it is being shoved down our throats. Right?
Keitani, we have completed affordable houses.
But people are still buying these houses with their money.
The president needs to make a communication that everybody was affected in Kibra. Let me get the data. You guys should be moved to the affordable houses.
In fairness, again, some of those completed projects are in outside Nairobi. You cannot relocate some of Mathare to Nakuru, for example, because some of them are in Nakuru. In fairness to the president. Yes.
Keitani, there's one thing that we should, when we're having a discussion on emergencies such as this, we need to refrain from being very political when it comes to these issues. Because you ask yourself, if the opposition party was right now in power, would they give these people 100,000? You see, so the discussion should not be based on, RUTO. We still have the counties. Why aren't we talking about what the governors in these counties are doing? Why aren't we talking about the environment committees that are in these counties? What are the response in these counties? How have they been? We need to analyze this situation holistically. We cannot base an argument on one gesture by His Excellency the President. I'm not saying it is perfect. I'm not saying it is substantive, but it is a start. Okay?
Okay.
And we need to move forward with strategies that are holistic in nature to solve such issues. There's nothing that azimio today will come to in front on the to the people and automatically solve the floods issue. There's nothing. We need to sit down as ruling party, as azimio, as non-state actors, and focus on alleviating the effects of these floods, and then we continue the other politics. But the moment we bring in, we say, oh, RUTO was there, how is this 10,000, how is this 100,000, we are losing the plot.
Okay, that is the reason as to why I asked Mr. Babu, Mr. Mwadime, if it is fair to, turn it into some sort of, political talk.
And I said,
let
me just counter what Wakili is saying, because now, Wakili is now turning this thing. Let me just deal with Wakili now and here, live on air.
Mr. Wakili Njoroge, you cannot really blame Kenyans for turning it into some sort of political talk, because even in his address in Mathare, the president rubbished the opposition for
exactly
talking about the housing project. In fact, at some point it looked like he's also advocating for the affordable housing project.
Not like that. It looked like he was advocating for the
affordable housing project. The affordable housing project is another issue we can discuss. That's why I'm solely focusing on floods and helping the people who have been affected. Let us avoid the conversation that leads to nowhere. We are being strategic in our discourse here. And what the government is doing, let's put it this way, if RUTO didn't go to Mathare and make the declarations that he made, people would still be complaining. True or false?
True.
Yes. So at the end of the day, what it shows you is that the government, the devolved units at the end of the day have not done enough for their people. Let's put it like that.
Probably before Babu responds, Wakili is saying something very interesting that cannot go unchallenged. The president himself stands as the head of state and as a party leader of UDA. Where it sits in Mathare, he's not standing as a party, he was not standing as the head of state, rather than as a party leader. And one thing that is coming out very clear, Kitani, is the issue of the devolution, because as it is, it seems as if it's not very clear how much money was allocated for Nairobi County on issues of disaster. As a matter of fact, the governor was in Senate. He said that the government did not allocate any money for national disaster. So I don't see at all what, as Wakili is saying, how counties are failing. As a matter of fact, I'm seeing as if the president is holding the funds at the national government.
But really, we said we're bringing in devolved units to bring services closer to Mwananchi.
And I'm getting there.
Keitani, you see, any county government has a budget.
Exactly.
They have an emergency.
Let him finish.
And I'm getting there.
It's true, yes.
They have a budget. You see, county governments collect revenues, but the revenues first go to the national government, then they're disbursed back to
the county.
Let's be practical and very realistic. You know this, Keitani.
No.
You understand?
Okay, but they do not entirely depend on funds from the national government. Exactly. There's their own source revenue.
I totally agree. But look at a situation whereby we are talking about Mathare and where it stands. Nairobi County. Nairobi County hosts the president of the day, His Excellency William Samoei Ruto. And why me and Babu are saying that this was a political show, we see some pictures that he was even buying goods from the kids.
Let me tell you, Ketan. Let me now deal with Wakili.
Okay, deal with them. Okay.
And I want to tell you that the things that we saw in Madari. Number one, we applaud the president for going to Madari. We applaud him. He left State House and went to Madari. But it's not only Madari that has been affected in the entire country. We have areas that have been seriously affected. We've not seen him there. Number two, we must say, Wakili said that if the president could have not gone, we could have said something. Now that he went there, we are saying something. We must say, because anyway, anything that is happening in this period of floods is political, either in opposition or in the government. And what happened in Madari is political. And if you look at the people, the communication department from the president's side, what they communicate, it is political.
Extremely political.
Okay.
And the picture they are sharing, they are very specific on the picture they are sharing.
Okay.
They are sharing pictures where the president is now jumping over some 2 stones. Like now he is the Shuja, he has survived floods. You get that? And he's into some kibanda there buying. You get that? Those are political theatrics to show the people in Madari that indeed the president came.
One would argue it depends from the point of view where you're looking at it, and your allegiance in terms of politics.
Side.
Because some people would say.
Let me give you another practical side.
Kindly.
The president is seen in a house with people who are barefooted. Right? A house. If the president comes to your house, the first thing that you'll think of, let me clean my house. But the perception that he's selling that it looks just calligraphed. Let me finish. Ketani. He goes into the house with gumboots.
Mr. Modime, kindly. I mean, the issue of gumboots and him going inside, it has brought some conversation here and there, but
that's what we are saying.
It's neither here nor there.
That's what we are saying.
It's not the point of concern at the moment.
It's the point of concern
because it's not.
No, I don't give it time. Let's give it time. But we will be seated in this house, and you will see those photos being used as political tools.
Okay, guys, finally, because time is not really on our side. Starting with you, let's talk a bit just as you wrap up your parting shots. Doctors' strike. 56 days later, they've gone back to work. But without the main thing that, the main concern they had, the issue of, paying of medical interns. How do you assess that?
I think my take on doctor strike and the end of it. One thing, first I want to applaud the SG, Atela, for maintaining the clutch and balancing the clutch and the fuel. The car is not going off and it's not moving. That is one man who is very prompt and intentional. The issue of CBA, and it's among the agreement they made, it needs to be revised. Because anyway, in a normalcy, at advocate these guys at the interns, they are not paid that amount of money. And these are some of the also serious professionals we have around. I'm a project manager by profession. I did internship, I was not paid even a coin. So honestly, on the CBA, we have to revise that. We have to agree that we need to revise that. We cannot pay an intern 206,000 for a whole year. Kwani walimu wanalipa pesa ngapi jamani? Hapo tunaambia hata Atela, ndugu yangu, we need to revise that CBA and ensure that we are making things reasonable for this country. Number two, it is good that they have called the strike. I mean, they have ended the strike, and at least the services at the hospitals can be received, because we were having serious situations there, and now that the floods are here, also the situation is worsening. So I want to just applaud the leadership of the doctors for calling off the strike. But the issue of CBA, we just have to be honest in that and discuss it.
Okay, fair enough. Mr. Modime.
Well, one, I will say I'm really glad that the strike is finally over, because at least now the Wanjikus and Atieno can get services at public hospitals as they deserve. But I cannot stop to think and imagine that this is a government that has known with a lot of trickery. I don't see them meeting the agreement at all. I foresee a situation whereby the doctors going back to the streets. So it's a very sad state, and I really am hoping that the two parties really honor each other. And it's a tough balance, And I'm hoping, because there's looming conversation about nurses going on the street. So I'm really worried. Doctors will go back to work, but we know that it's the nurses that give the services at the hospital. So I'm really worried about that issue as well, because at the end of it all, it's the voter that suffers the most.
Okay,
yeah.
Fair enough. Wakili, coming to you as you give us your parting shots, I don't know if when you were intern you were earning probably the amount of money
that would be a dream. That would be a dream. That would be
I just wanted to know.
Yeah. Definitely not. But this doctor's issue, for me, I feel it's a 1 step forward, 2 steps back kind of issue. Because you have not solved the flesh of the issue here.
True.
Okay? And remember, actually these medical interns do a lot in those hospitals. They are the ones who are left by those qualified doctors who work in public hospitals and in private hospitals and end up doing a lot of the work over 24-hour shifts sometimes. So, I mean, I still feel like it's not resolved any issue really. It's a positive sign to the citizens that the doctors are now out of strike. Yes, they're going to go back to work. But the thing that ails me about this country is that we've never been able to solve issues to a level that now we solve issues by saying we'll form a task force. Every time we'll form a task force. So today they have striked. They have decided it's over now. 1 month, 1 year down the line, another strike comes, another task force is formed. What are we doing? We're not addressing this thing substantively. And the only way we can get sustainable development in this country, especially when it comes to services, is strategizing from the perspective of what we need as a country, not what the government thinks is right. It is the people who come up with the needs, and then the government supplements those needs by coming up with reasonable policies. Okay. So if the CBA, the 2017 CBA worked till now, or has been having turmoil, there was need for the Ministry of Health to prioritize that before anything else when it came into power. Okay. That would have solved this issue once and for all. And that's what we need to see from Kenya Kwanza.
Fair enough.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Wakili, for joining us this morning. Mr. Madime, always a pleasure. And of course, Mr. Ken Babu, always a pleasure having you around. Thank you. I wish we had more time to continue this conversation because, as Calligraph would say, it was getting a bit political now, but that was the morning greet for you here on Lookuptv. Of course, the best is all the conversation surrounding the doctor's strike that was called off yesterday and the issue of students returning back to school, even as there are very many genuine concerns in terms of infrastructure, where these students will go in terms of, those who were displaced by floods, seeking shelter at various schools across the country. Where will they now go? And even as, we're not yet so sure in terms of, the rainfall, because rains continue to pound different parts of the country, but we'll be, of course, following up that particular issue for you, as well as the impeachment motion, the hearing on the impeachment motion against Agriculture CS Franklin Mithika-Linturi, which enters its second day today. What will his fate be after the lapse of the 10-day window given to the committee in regards to the hearing on that particular saga? Now, until then, you can visit our website www.lookuptv.co.ke just to get an overview of the stories making headlines not only in the country but as well across the borders. Now, be sure to join us at 1, 4 and 7 together at 9 p.m. with Nancy Nelima, just to get a view, or rather a clear, detailed stories on what has been happening across the country as of today and even beyond the borders. Do have yourself a wonderful day, and like always, God bless.